today, just feel free to type it into the comments, and we'll do whatever we can to fix it. Also, if you have any questions for Aneri, I will do my best to moderate and check on those while we're chatting, and we can ask at the end. So I'm really excited to have Aneri on with us today. She graduated with me actually in the class of 2006, and she's done a lot of really cool things, which I'm really excited to talk with you about today, Aneri. But most recently, she is the CEO of a really awesome, I would call it like a digital content platform. Is that right? Sightworthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Aneri will just share with us all about what she's been up to. But thanks again, Aneri, for doing this. And I think we should just take it back to where it all started. So tell us a little bit about you as an upper schooler at Country Day. What kind of activities were you involved in? What sports did you play? What did you do? Just tell us all about that.
Yeah. God, it feels like so long ago
Okay.
now. So I was super into math and English. Like those were my two subjects that I loved. I was in like D. Will's AP English class, and I played lacrosse. So I played tennis and lacrosse, but then I quit tennis because I liked team sports. I also this is crazy that this still exists, but I helped start philosophy club senior year so that I could spend more time with Dr. Freed.
That's awesome. I love that. I didn't know that you were a founder of that.
Yeah. It started out as kind of just like a fun way to spend more time with him, but
Yeah.
it became something really awesome. So yeah, and then I was also in choir for many years. So I kind of had this like artistic side. And then I think I took Mrs. K's debate class, which I actually really enjoyed. Like I liked debate, even though I never did it as a sport.
Okay. I'm
And I
sure
think, huh?
that's yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I spent most of my time probably playing lacrosse, and or yeah, writing and enjoying math. Like I loved math when I was in high school,
That's
and then I also led a diversity council. So that was kind of I don't remember now like who else was in it or whatever, but I remember like
yeah.
one of the coolest things I think I did looking back at Country Day was I led a day where we explored perspectives that are dissimilar from our own. And so I brought in Jamoki's mom. Do you remember she was Black and she was disabled and she talked about her experience. And I thought that was like a profound moment. Yeah, so I organized stuff like that through Diversity Council.
Very cool. I love that. And if you might not remember this, but just like for perspective for our current students today, do you remember like any issues that were relevant to the Diversity Council at that time? Are they still some of the same things we're thinking about now? If you could remember, I would just be curious as to what you guys maybe were.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the time, it's really hard to remember, but I think at the time, like we took we took these like annual trips from Diversity Council to these like conferences in the
Okay.
US. And one year we went to Hawaii. And I
Oh,
remember there was groups you could sign up for issues that you cared about. And I remember, I don't know if I'm calling her up, like I remember Melanie Backos, she was half Greek, half Filipino. And I didn't realize that this affected her until she signed up for the group that talked about basically like interracial marriage and being mixed.
okay.
And a lot of what they talked about was like, even things like when you sign up for the SAT, like what box do you check?
Right.
Like that kind of thing. I think when Jamoki's mom came in, someone asked like, "Oh, do you wish that you didn't have disabilities?" And her comment she made was like, "Look, I mean, being a Black woman is also in some ways a disability. Like I
Mm-hmm.
could live an easier life if I wasn't Black,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't wish that. I don't wish I wasn't Black. So no, I don't wish that I didn't have these things. They're part of me."
Right.
I don't think at the time I realized like we didn't talk about that stuff at that age. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know if it's hard for me to say whether or not some of the same issues existed. I
Yeah.
don't think that we talked about them.
That makes
And I think now when I look back at Diversity Council in high school, I'm like, we were like kind of ahead of our time. Like
mm-hmm.
we didn't even, like, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's my answer. Like, I think some of those issues existed. We just maybe weren't so open about them.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, okay, so you're doing all these things, you're involved in all these really cool activities and clubs and stuff at Country Day, and it comes time for you to be a junior or a senior, and you're trying to figure out where you're going to go to college. And I actually distinctly remember that you were going to go to Wisconsin. And tell us a little bit about that thought process for you. First of all, like, what did you write your college essays on. But then like, why did you end up choosing Wisconsin, and what was that experience like for you?
That's a good question. For me, I wanted to go somewhere where I didn't know anybody.
Hmm.
That just seemed really attractive because
Yeah,
I think that Country Day is like an amazing school. I do think when you're around the same people all the time, sometimes you get stuck in a bubble.
totally.
And I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know. And I tend to like, even if I'm not conforming on the inside, I think I maybe at this age too, I felt pressured to seem like I was like everybody else. I was like, yeah, like I totally am pre-med and
Yeah.
whatever. And
Oh,
I think deep down, I think
mhm.
sometimes this happens, right? Even if you yourself haven't verbalized something you've said, or you're thinking, your actions will just kind of push you in the right direction. You know,
Mhm.
you'll kind of just do it. I remember Miss Pinkela was my college counselor. And
Okay.
one thing she said to me really stuck with me is she was like, I think that you might like Wisconsin because it's a good blend of academics, but it's also a little bit more laid back. And they also, it's interesting looking back, I didn't think I was going to go be a CEO, but Wisconsin actually generates more CEOs than like Ivy Leagues.
No.
Yeah, which is so interesting. And I think it's
Yeah.
because they don't pressure you to study one thing or the other. Like it's a really good school. It's the best school in Wisconsin and Minnesota. Like all the
Yeah.
smart kids from those two states go there, but they don't tell you like you have to go into business school or you have to do this. I thought there was a little bit more freedom of thought,
Yeah.
especially because I think similarly to probably Ann Arbor, it's a very liberal town in
Hmm.
a very conservative state, but a very liberal town. And then on top of that, there was something really appealing to me about not knowing anybody. And I think even at that age, I subconsciously sensed that I need to reinvent myself. Like I don't feel like I fit in. So I don't know how to like come out of my shell within my bubble. So let me just leave and start over. So I think
Okay.
that, and when I visited, I mean, come on, it was like on the lake.
Yeah.
Um,
Beautiful.
it was beautiful. And I think I remember in the presentation them making that comment about CEOs. So even though I didn't think I was going to go into business then, I think I maybe subconsciously sensed that
Yeah.
I want to go somewhere that encourages me to be a leader.
Yeah. You had good odds for becoming a CEO, basically. So
I guess so.
Um,
Yeah.
so for any kids who are, okay, so I think if you're from Michigan and you go to Michigan or Michigan State, you're going, probably with some people from Country Day. But if you're from Michigan and you're going to Wisconsin, you are going to a place where there's going to be a ton of in-state kids who know each other. And so I'm curious, like, what advice would you have for a student who is going to a Wisconsin or a Penn State where there's going to be a ton of kids who all know each other who are there, and you're like new kid on the block? Like, how did you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I joined the club lacrosse team at
Okay.
Wisconsin, which I met like a lot of people through that. And I also, I mean, it's funny because maybe this is just how it works out. Like a school like Wisconsin, you have to realize it's like Michigan, it's like
Mhm.
40,000 people.
Yeah.
So yes, there's a lot of in-state kids, but there's also a lot of out-of-state kids.
Yeah.
People from California and New York are in
Hmm.
every state school, right?
Yeah.
And so my friends all ended up being mostly from out of state, probably
Okay.
not by coincidence.
Yeah.
And so I think it's easy to assume that like, oh, people there might all be in state. But I think when a school is that big, even
Yeah.
if it's only 5% out of state or 10, that's like thousands of people. So I think no matter what, at a school like that, if you work hard to cultivate and like follow your interests, you will
Mhm.
find your tribe. So for me, it was a combination of
Love.
like the lacrosse team. And then I also started, God, in my classes, like I majored in economics and I met one of my
Okay.
best friends through one of my economics classes.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I think because the people that are not in state are not going home a lot, you
Hmm.
tend to like find those people. Do you know what I mean? Because you don't
Yeah.
have the option of just like, oh, I'll just go home this weekend. So you're
Exactly.
always on campus. And so you
Yeah.
tend to like, yeah, it's just like a different, you build like a different cultural community of like, we're just always here.
Hmm. I love that. And that makes perfect sense. And I appreciate what you said about you got immediately involved. And I think that that's really good advice. Just don't go to a new place and, kind of just wait for things to happen. You need to like take initiative to find something that you like and get involved and meet people. And I also think people forget too, like you will meet friends in your classes. So that's a great point too.
I probably put myself more out there too, right? Like when someone
Yeah.
would hang out with me, I'd like text them and be like, let's hang out. Whereas like,
Yeah,
if I'd gone
exactly.
somewhere where I knew people, I might have been like, I don't want to seem uncool. I had like
Right.
no qualms about that. I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody.
Everyone wants to make a friend too. So it's not like totally outside of the box to be doing that kind of a thing when you're a freshman. So yeah, I mean, people should feel totally comfortable to do exactly what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, um, you did not move right to New York after college, right? You were in Boston first. Okay, so tell us a little bit about though moving to New York. I'm guessing right now a lot of Country Day alums who are seniors are going to start thinking about they're probably going to be moving to New York. So tell us a little bit about your first year in the city. I know it wasn't right out of college, but tell us about your first year in the city. Any thoughts for DCD alums who are about to move there right now?
Yeah, I mean, so I moved. My first job was at Bonobos as a copywriter, and it was such a crazy thing. Like, I got the job, and then I moved like a few weeks later. Like, it was, I did not think I was going to move there. Like, it was a whole thing, and I was scared.
Just kind of,
But the city is so, and I got there on like a Saturday, and I started my job on Monday. Like, it was
oh,
so crazy, and I was 24, so it wasn't right after college, but pretty soon after.
yeah.
Being 24 and like having a job in the city is so fun. Like,
Hmm.
you meet so many people. I was going to like concerts every night, obviously pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
And I met like some of the people I'm still very, very close friends with today were people that I met at that first job. And it's
Okay.
almost similar to kind of being out of state. Like, because I
Mhm.
didn't have,
Yeah.
not a lot of my none of my Wisconsin friends moved to New York. And so I also was moving there with like, yes, I had a few friends from Country Day in Michigan and stuff, but like I was like one of the few people at a startup, I guess, at that time.
Mhm.
And so I immediately became immersed in that scene. And I remember like one of my best friends today, she was a designer on my team.
Okay.
And that was like 9 years ago.
Okay.
Um, the first 6 months, I will say, it was a little overwhelming. Like, it was
Yeah.
hard. Like, I felt like it was social in a very, very different way, because it felt like it wasn't just about having fun and going out. You were
Mhm.
also meeting people that were probably going to be introducing you to your next job.
Yeah.
Like, and so my advice to people is like, and obviously during the pandemic, it's going to be a little bit different, but like as soon as things open up, like every person you meet in New York is like pretty ambitious. And
Hmm.
so I think that was just really cool, because you meet one person who introduces you to the next person, and pretty soon you're like, I don't
True.
know, doing like amazing things on the weekends. And so, yeah, like I started going to comedy shows. I started like going to like plays. I started, I don't know, like seeing things I just didn't see when I was in Wisconsin at like
Mhm.
a small college town. So I think just being open minded and like, again, putting on your like networking hat and just like,
Yeah.
you know, being open to new
Never.
experiences. New York is such an amazing place to do that. And even if you don't want to live in New York forever, I think it's just a really, really good place to get your feet wet for the first few years, because it pushes you.
Yeah. I love that. And that's so true. I think, any big city, will give you that experience, but New York in particular is just so fast paced and moving. And it's really good to get, that kind of experience early on in your career and things.
It's
So
like boot camp. You're like
yeah,
working until like 10, and then you're
yeah,
going out till 2, and then you're getting up and doing it again. And
yeah,
at
yeah,
24, that was really fun.
yeah. Sounds so fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so you worked at Bonobos. So, but and
Hmm.
tell us a little bit about you've worked at these like really cool companies along the way that people have heard of. Bonobos, Fine Spark, Shutterstock. So how did you get these positions? And how do you determine, especially as a younger person in their career, that this is the right company for you to work at?
Yeah. So one thing I'll say, I before I worked at Bonobos, I was actually pre-med, and I was working at Children's Hospital.
Hmm.
And then I realized I really truly, like, every day I was crying. And I was
Okay,
like, it feels weird
that's
at
totally
23.
not the right career path. Yeah.
At 23, it feels really weird to be crying all the time. Like,
Yeah.
it feels like it's not right, right?
Right.
And so I listened to that, and I was like, okay, let me at least try applying for jobs. And I took the MCAT and did well. So I was like, okay, I can
Okay.
always go back. This
Sure.
isn't like me failing, which I think when you go to Country Day, there's this fear of failure. And I was like, no, I'm just going to try something else.
Hmm.
And my skill was writing. Like, I was a really good writer. And so one of my friends worked at Bonobos as like a customer service ninja. And she was like, and I asked her, she was like my only connection in New York. I didn't even like know how to apply for jobs because I
Okay.
was on the pre-med track for so
But
long.
it's so important.
And I asked her, I was like, do you think they would hire another writer?
Hmm.
And she was like, let me just ask. And she did. And they're like, yeah, send us her stuff. And that was one thing I learned. I got lucky in that way. Like, I was never shy to ask for help.
Yes, I
And
love.
so in that way, like, I got this job at this like awesome startup without having like a ton of experience, right?
Mhm.
Because I think I knew like I'm not going to be able to do this in the normal way because I have no experience. Like, I'm an economics pre-med major. Like, what am I
Yeah.
going to do now? And I learned very quickly from that experience that referrals go a really long way. So the
Yes.
Country Day Network is amazing. Use
Hmm.
it.
Yes.
Um, so that's, and by the way, I had an intern reach out to me a couple of years ago to work for Sightworthy, and she left me 3 voicemails, and so I hired her because I was like, who does that?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it was amazing. Like, persistence pays off, right? So
Hmm.
that was my first thing. And I think and from there, I actually, to be honest, didn't love my job as a writer at Bonobos. I think I realized that while I loved writing, I wanted something that sat more at the intersection of tech and writing. And my job at Bonobos, I loved it and it set me up and I got to build a portfolio, but it was more like a stepping stone.
Okay.
And the way I got the job at Shutterstock is equally crazy. I had put out the feelers to all my friends and family in New York of like, I'm looking for something else. I don't know exactly what that is, but something where I can like work more in the center of tech.
Mm-hmm.
And for my then manager, his name's David Fraga, he tweeted, and he was like a VP of biz dev at Shutterstock, and he tweeted being like, "Hey, we have two interesting roles, one at Uber, one at Shutterstock, that I'm looking for like a young hustler for." And my cousin Akash used to work with
Okay.
David, and Akash responded to him on Twitter and said, "Hey, Aneri would be perfect for this," and he interviewed me, and that was how I got that job.
That I love.
So again, I think the more you're talking about what you want to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
people like helping people. And if you walk with purpose and you tell people what you want to be doing, they will just help you. And so, and again, and then I got a job working directly with the CEO of Shutterstock. That was not on the job board, right? I got to help launch new products. I got to learn
Yeah.
how to be an entrepreneur. My second interview at Shutterstock was with the CEO, and I joined there 2 weeks before it went public. So
Wow.
that job was not listed on the job board. And I think it's easy to say, oh, you just got lucky. I also just think I was literally pounding the pavement every day, like emailing
No.
everyone, texting everyone all the time.
Yeah, and I think that too because I think when you are a student, either in high school or in college, and people say like, "Oh, I got lucky getting that job," but like they didn't get lucky getting that job. That person was likely out there just like you were, hustling, making sure that like their name was out there, they had a great reputation, they were meeting people, things like that. So none of these things are always, luck. It's a lot of times like
It's a
opportunity and
combination of things.
yeah,
And I think
exactly.
people generally know it's much easier to introduce you to somebody. And this is good advice for country day kids. It is much easier to introduce you if I know you're going to follow up consistently. Because the problem is if you don't, then I might not want to introduce you because that could actually ruin my reputation.
Exactly.
Um,
Yep, I
mhm.
love that. That's great advice. So, okay, so talk to us about what happened after you left Shutterstock because I know you had a few other experiences, including starting a business before you started.
Yeah, it's so crazy like how you end up on this. I never thought of myself as a business owner, or that's not something I have even
Mhm.
aspired to be. But I think what I learned at Shutterstock was because I worked directly for the CEO and I just got to help him launch new
Mhm.
products. I learned that I liked working in a way where I had autonomy. That was just what I was good at.
Yeah.
And through that job, I met my previous co-founder, Zule, and she was director of user research there. And she was working on a fitness app. Like at the time, her and one of her friends were trying to do those 30-day fitness challenges that were on
Mhm.
Pinterest, and they kept missing days. And
Okay.
they're like, oh, there has to be an app for this. Like, we are working women, we need a way to get fit. And there
Yeah.
wasn't. So she decided to build it. And when she
Okay.
needed somebody to help do the copywriting and branding, she actually reached out to me and was like, hey, like, I know you're a good writer. Would you want to, like, again, my tech and writing experience. She's like, would you want to help with this thing? That's
Mhm.
like how it started. And so at first I was just like helping her. It was like a favor. And then
Okay.
over time, when we launched the app, that's when we realized it went viral quickly. Like, we didn't realize how lucky we were. This was like 2013. We just thought
Okay.
like, this is what happens. And
Yeah.
this was something we were doing from like 8 to midnight, right?
Wow. Okay.
um, on weekdays because we weren't making money. It was just like kind
Mhm.
of for fun.
Yeah.
And we were also, oh, this is an interesting thing. We were given a lot of flack for like, why are you just focused on women? Because in
Mhm.
2013 nobody was doing that, right?
Yeah.
2014, and it was like just do everybody. But we kind of went with our gut
Yeah.
of like, no, I think women have like a different motivation for working
Yeah.
out. So I think that's why it went viral quickly. So in that first year, it got 200,000 downloads without any marketing, which is
Wow.
so crazy. Um, and I think what I learned from that is that I mean, we were the customers, right? And if you truly understand your audience
Right.
and you're honest to them and you build a brand voice around them,
Yeah.
something will happen, right? Especially if the voice is unique and the problem statement you're solving is one that you deeply understand.
Right.
So that was like my first real, like, it was a side hustle that ended up becoming this like successful app. And we did that for about 2 years. And then we decided, and we used like a developer abroad to help build the first version. So it was also an interesting like exercise in you don't need $5 million to start something. You just need to understand your customer,
Yeah.
and then you can make it work.
Okay.
And then we decided we didn't want to run, for whatever reason, we didn't make that the big business. But that was when me and Zulay knew that we wanted to work together. So
Okay.
I had a bunch of like shares at Shutterstock. So after Shutterstock went public, I waited till those shares vested 2 years
Okay.
later, and I sold, and then decided that I had enough savings to try to start something on my own.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and I at Shutterstock, I was working on a bunch of different video businesses. So I was helping build this like in-house video education platform. And when I was at Shutterstock, this was like 2014,